The sound of the blood pressure cuff inflating always felt like a heavy fist squeezing my arm. But the prick of the glucometer needle was the worst part of my day. It wasn't the pain. It was the number that followed. 310, Mom. Again. Sarah sighed, shaking her head. She wrote the number down in her small spiral notebook with a frustrated, jerky motion. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the small, cheap pen, scratching ink onto the page. My body felt like 90, not 69. I was Margaret, but everyone called me Maggie. I used to be up before the sun, working the hot line at the school cafeteria for 30 years. I made sure every little one got a warm meal. Now I couldn't stand up without the room spinning. I knew Sarah was tired. I lived in my little house in Des Moines with her and my 2 grandbabies, Lily and Ethan. I loved having them close. Their laughter was the only thing that kept the silence away after my husband passed. But the house felt less like a home and more like a cage. Sarah watched me all the time. The diabetes was the monster under my bed. 4 doctors, years of pills, metformin, glyburide, all taken exactly right. Sarah, being a pharmacy technician, was meticulous. Every morning she watched me swallow. Every evening she logged the numbers. But the numbers never went down. 280, 305, 310. The last doctor was clear, Mom, Sarah had said last week, leaning over the worn floral couch where I spent most of my time. You just have a bad body. There's nothing more they can do. We're not spring chickens anymore, and you've had your chance. The words sunk into me like heavy stones. It wasn't the pills or the needles I was scared of. I was terrified of being abandoned. If I got too sick, if I became too much trouble, Sarah would certainly follow through on her threat, put me in a home. The thought of leaving Lily and Ethan was unbearable, so I learned to lie. When my vision blurred trying to read the Bible, I didn't blink or rub my eyes. I just closed them and said I was praying. When the dizziness hit and the kitchen counter swam before me, I just leaned back and pretended to stretch. When Lily, my 10-year-old angel, would ask, "Grandma, you okay?" I plastered on the smile I used when serving mashed potatoes to 300 hungry kids, and I said, "Yes, honey, I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I was always tired. My mouth felt like cotton wool had been stuffed in it. I woke up every 2 hours begging for water. The worst was the dry, hacking cough that had started recently. It always hit worst after dinner, leaving me short of breath, gasping on the couch like a fish on the shore. I was afraid of falling asleep and never waking up. I felt the tension in the house thickening, like cheap gravy left on the stove too long. Sarah was tired of me. I knew she had her eye on the house. This little place was all I had left of my life with Robert. It was paid off. Sarah had been dropping hints for months, talking about needing to sell it to move to a better school district for the kids. If only your health was better, Mom. We could figure things out. She'd sigh, making it clear that my dying body was the only thing stopping her from her happy future. That was just how the world turns, I guess, but it shouldn't turn on your own mother. Then came Tuesday. I was too weak to even get out of bed. This was the worst I had felt in months. My head pounded. Sarah brought me lunch, a small bowl of clear soup and some crackers, and stood over me, watching. "You have to eat, Mom. If you don't eat, your sugar will get worse," she insisted, her voice flat, almost robotic. I swallowed the last spoonful of the bland soup. It left a strange, sharp, metallic taste in my mouth, followed by immediate, terrible nausea. Within an hour, my head was splitting, and I couldn't see the numbers on the alarm clock clearly. My hands shook. This was wrong. I took the pills exactly when I was supposed to. I ate the bland, terrible food she gave me. Why was I getting sicker and faster when Sarah was managing everything so carefully? I tried to tell myself it was the diabetes finally winning the fight, that maybe she was right. Maybe I just had a bad body. But as dusk settled, a thought crept in, cold and terrible. I pushed it down deep. Did Sarah want me to die? No. Impossible. I raised that girl. I sacrificed everything I had earned flipping burgers and serving mac and cheese for 30 years so she could get her education and become something more than me. This was just fear talking, paranoia. The sickness was making me crazy. Later that night, the thirst was excruciating. My throat was sandpaper. I had to get water, cold, and immediate. I pushed myself carefully out of bed, holding the edge of the dresser, shuffling slowly down the hall, careful not to wake Lily and Ethan, who were asleep in the guest room. As I shuffled past Sarah's closed bedroom door, I heard her voice. It was low and tight, pulled thin like a stretched wire. She was on the phone, but she wasn't talking to her husband. He was on the night shift. I stopped, leaning against the cold plaster wall. I told myself I didn't want to eavesdrop. I just needed to catch my breath. But the chilling tone of her voice kept me pinned there. She wasn't talking about shopping or work. She was talking about me. I pressed my ear closer to the thin wood. The words were quiet, a whisper, but they cut through the night, clear as a bell. It's just a matter of time now. Keep the paperwork ready for the title transfer. My heart stopped. Title transfer. I hadn't signed anything. Sarah paused, listening to the voice on the other end. Then her voice dropped even lower, becoming utterly devoid of any warmth or emotion I had ever known. It was ice. The numbers don't lie. She's getting exactly what the doctors expected, maybe even sooner now. Soon. She finished, a sickening finality in her tone. This house will be fully ours. I froze, leaning on the wall, the thirst forgotten. My mind went blank, then flooded with a terrible, undeniable clarity. That metallic taste, the forced meals, the constant high numbers Sarah logged. It wasn't just neglect. It was calculated. My daughter wasn't waiting for me to die. She was counting the minutes. I shuffled back to my room, not daring to make a sound. I didn't reach for the water. I reached for the light switch and flicked it on. I needed to see. I looked at the glass of water Sarah had brought me earlier, now sitting untouched on the nightstand, and then at the 4 pills in the plastic dish she had prepared for the morning. They looked like my usual medicine, white and round. But something felt heavy, foul, dirty. I realized then that my life was not in the hands of my doctors, or even my own weak body. It was in the hands of the person standing between me and my grandchildren. I had been lying to the children, telling them, I'm fine. But the lie that kept me alive wasn't the one I told Lily. The lie that kept me breathing was the weak, sick performance I had been putting on for Sarah. She thought I was too far gone to fight. I wasn't fine. And I wouldn't be fine if I didn't move fast. I had to find proof. I needed an ally, and I needed to get better, or that title transfer would be signed over my dead body, literally. I lay in the dark, clutching the damp sheets. I didn't know what Sarah was doing, but I knew she was using my sickness as her weapon, and I had to find a weapon of my own. Something simple, something she wouldn't see coming. I closed my eyes, but I wasn't praying this time. I was planning. I would start tomorrow, one day at a time. I spent the next 2 days just watching her, moving slow, like a turtle in thick mud. Sarah's words cold as creek water in winter. Soon this house will be fully ours, played in my head over and over. It had been hard enough thinking she was just tired of me. Finding out she wanted me dead for the house. That broke something deep inside, something that couldn't be fixed. I wasn't scared of her anymore. I was scared for Lily and Ethan. If I went to a home, or if I died, those sweet children would be stuck with a monster wearing their mother's face. The symptoms, Sarah said, were just my bad body. Felt evil now. The terrible dry cough that ripped through me after dinner, the sharp nausea, and the sugar readings, always high. 295, 305. I had to test her. I had to know for sure if she was watching me take the pills, but not caring if they worked. The next morning, Sarah came in with my little plastic dish. 2 big white pills, 1 small yellow pill, and a vitamin. 4 pills total. "Here you go, Mom. Drink the whole glass of water," she said, her eyes fixed on my throat. I lifted the glass, swallowed a big gulp, and pretended to take the pills. I made sure to cough a little, wetting my chin. When Sarah turned to put the empty dish away, I quickly slid the 4 pills off my tongue and tucked them under the corner of my mattress, right where the sheet tucks in. I waited all day. If I really had taken the medicine, my sugar should drop. Maybe not by much, but it should drop. That evening, Sarah came in for the test. She wiped my finger, pricked it, and squeezed out the blood. She put the tiny strip into the machine. We waited for the beep. The number flashed. 305, higher than yesterday. Sarah sighed, throwing her head back in frustration. "See, Mom, you must be sneaking snacks. Your body just doesn't respond. We need to prepare for the inevitable." "It is what it is." I looked at her face. No panic, no worry. Just boredom. She didn't care that the number was high. She expected it. She knew the medicine hadn't been taken or that it wasn't working. It dawned on me right there. She wasn't just neglecting me. She was making sure I failed. I kept up the act for 2 more days, pretending to swallow the pills, hiding them under the mattress. The sugar readings stayed in the 300s. She was either logging fake numbers, or the pills weren't real to begin with. I knew I couldn't fight her inside the house. She was too careful. I had to get out, and I needed someone else to look at this, someone who knew what they were doing. The only person I trusted was Carol Perkins, 2 doors down. Carol was a retired registered nurse, a stout woman with kind eyes and a smart brain. Sarah hated Carol because she thought Carol was a nosy old bird. Perfect. I waited until Sarah had left for her pharmacy shift on Friday morning, around 9:30. It took me a full 5 minutes to get out of my chair and onto my feet. My legs felt like old wood. But I held the wall and shuffled out the door. The sun felt bright and cold on my face. Carol's house was a short walk, but it felt like a marathon. When I knocked on the door, Carol pulled me straight inside. "Maggie, what are you doing out? You look like you're about to blow over," Carol said, helping me sit down on her soft velvet couch. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Carol, I need you to look at something, and you have to promise me, on your mother's grave, you won't say a word to anyone, especially Sarah." Carol's face went serious, the kind of serious a nurse gets when she sees blood. "I promise, Maggie, what is it?" I pulled out the spiral notebook, the one Sarah used for my readings. I showed her the last month. Every reading was 280, 300, 310. Then I showed her the pills I had saved under the mattress, the 4 little white and yellow pills. "She says I'm sick, Carol. She says my body just gives up. But I found this out, and I heard her on the phone talking about the house title transfer. She's waiting for me to die." Carol took the notebook and her brow furrowed, her finger tracing the numbers. "She's a nurse. She knows what these numbers mean. This is bad, Maggie. Chronically high like this. It should be causing severe symptoms. Are you experiencing a lot of thirst, constant peeing and confusion? Yes, all of it. And this terrible dry cough. It hits worst after dinner. And the nausea is immediate after I eat the soup Sarah brings me. Carol looked at the pills I'd saved. These are your metformin and glyburide. The active ingredients help the body use insulin. But if you're taking them, and your sugar is still 300, something is wrong with the medicine, or the numbers are fake. She paused, then her eyes went to the bottom of the logbook. Look here, Maggie. Every time she logs a high number, she also notes that you took your nutritional supplement after dinner. You said that's when your cough hits? I nodded, gripping the arm of the couch. The cough and the terrible bloating. It feels like gas is ripping my insides. Carol took a deep breath. She didn't sound like a friend anymore. She sounded like a nurse making a diagnosis. Maggie, this isn't negligence. This is calculated. That dry, hacking cough and the bloating you describe? That's classic functional dyspepsia. Severe gastric inflammation and poor digestion in seniors. Metformin can cause some stomach upset. But this sounds too severe. It might be interaction with something else. She looked straight at me. Your Sarah is pushing you closer to diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA. If your sugar stays this high, your blood turns acidic. It's what kills many untreated diabetics. And she knows it. The words hit me hard, but they weren't news. They were confirmation. The pain I felt was not the pain of sickness, but the pain of my daughter's betrayal. How do I fight back, Carol? The doctors believe her logbook. She's the medical professional. Carol stood up and went into her kitchen. She came back with a laminated card. It looked like something she might have used when teaching basic health classes. Maggie, I believe you. We need proof she's logging fraudulent numbers. But first, we need to get your sugar down, safely, and fast. The modern doctors, and certainly your pharmacy tech daughter, push expensive drugs. But let me tell you about what basic preparations the American Diabetes Association endorses that big pharma often ignores. Things that are cheap and simple, and work great for managing post-meal spikes. She pointed to the card. It's called the Clove Protocol. A natural weapon, Maggie. Listen to me. You need to start soaking 2 whole cloves in 8 ounces of water overnight. Drink that water first thing in the morning, 30 minutes before breakfast. The main ingredient, eugenol, helps regulate your postprandial glucose. U.S. studies show it can reduce your blood sugar by 15 to 25 milligrams per deciliter. Daily. My eyes widened. Cloves? Like for baking? Exactly. Natural, simple, and Sarah will never look for it. It also improves digestion by up to 40%. That terrible cough and bloating you have? It will help cut that right out. Sarah told me those folk remedies were useless. I whispered. Exactly, Carol said grimly. That's how she keeps you sick. The cloves are your secret weapon. But we need proof of her tampering. She handed me a brand new, expensive glucometer. This is calibrated. It's accurate. You will test yourself right after Sarah tests you. Write her number down in your logbook, and write your real number down in a secret logbook. That's your evidence. I walked back to my house that day feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. My fear was replaced by a cold, righteous anger. You live and learn? And what I learned today was how to fight. I started the Clove Protocol that very night. Sarah was in the living room, watching some silly reality show. I crept into the kitchen, I took a small, clean glass jar, filled it with water, and dropped in 2 whole cloves. It smelled warm, like Christmas. I hid the jar deep inside the pantry behind a bag of flour. The next morning, before Sarah was even awake, I crept out and got the jar. The water was light brown and smelled strongly of spice. I spooned the liquid into my tea mug, careful to strain out the cloves. The taste was earthy, strong, but warm. It felt good hitting my stomach. I kept up the act of being frail and sick for Sarah. I slumped deeper on the couch. I coughed dramatically. That morning, Sarah brought me my pills. I palmed them and hid them away, just like before. That evening, Sarah tested me. She wrote down 305 milligrams per deciliter. She told me how tired she was of me not getting better. As soon as she left the room, I pulled out Carol's meter. My hands were shaking. I pricked my finger. I held my breath. The screen lit up. 288 milligrams per deciliter. My eyes blurred with tears, but not from sadness. It was true. In one day, using nothing but clove water and my own pill discipline, I had already dropped 17 points. Sarah's number was a lie. A bold, terrible lie. I started a new logbook, a tiny one I kept zipped inside the lining of my purse. I logged 2 columns, Sarah's fake number, Maggie's real number. Over the next week, I continued the clove protocol religiously. 2 cloves, 8 ounces of water, first thing in the morning. I even started chewing a clove after the bland soup Sarah forced me to eat. It cut the sharp, metallic nausea right away. By day 4, I noticed the dry cough. The one that kept me up gasping at night was almost gone. The bloating was down. My body felt less like a bag of rocks, and more like mine. Day, Sarah's logged reading. Maggie's secret reading. Sprada. Day 1, 305 mati, well, 288 matalal. Day divided 4, 315 matalandars, 255 matalal. Day 7, 320 matalar, 230 big my true sugar level, 230 milligrams per deciliter after 1 week, was still high, but it was 100 points lower than the number Sarah was telling my doctor. The math was sickeningly clear. Sarah was adding a full 100 points to my readings every day, just to make my case look worse. She wanted the doctors to panic, to recommend more extreme measures, maybe even hospice. The anger was clean and sharp. It cut through the grief. I knew the pills I was hiding were the real metformin, but Sarah was forcing me to take them while logging high numbers. That didn't make sense unless she was replacing them at some point. While Sarah was out one afternoon, I started searching her room. I needed to see what she was putting into those little plastic dishes. I felt terrible going through my own daughter's drawers, but the maternal feeling was almost completely dead now. She was a threat to my life and my connection to my grandchildren. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, they say, but this rotten fruit had fallen far away, indeed. I found it taped behind a stack of tax forms in her bottom drawer, a thick envelope. I opened it. It was my life insurance policy, $450,000. She was the sole beneficiary. A small note was scribbled on the side of the policy, in Sarah's tight handwriting. Maturity date, 4 weeks. 4 weeks. She was counting down the days until my body gave up, and she got the money. Next to the insurance policy, I found a small, clear Ziploc bag. Inside were small white pills. They looked just like my metformin. And beside the bag, I saw an old, peeling prescription bottle. Sarah's careful writing was all over the faded label. She wasn't just giving me my pills and logging fake numbers. She was tampering with the medicine itself. The Ziploc bag contained starch powder, the kind they use to thicken gravy or laundry water, and only a tiny bit of my actual prescription, crushed up. She was diluting the dosage by over 60% with the starch, making it useless, and then logging the fake high numbers to show the doctors that the medicine wasn't working. The discovery wasn't painful like the phone call had been. This was just the proof of a cold, horrible fact. My only child was systematically murdering me for money and property. I clutched the evidence, the fake pills, the insurance policy, my 2 logbooks, and went straight to Carol's house. I didn't care if Sarah came home. I was moving too fast now. Carol's eyes widened as she looked at the evidence. "Maggie, this is attempted homicide. We have to call the police right now." "No," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "Not yet. If we call them now, Sarah will panic. She's a pharmacy technician. She'll know exactly how to throw away the rest of the evidence. I need to get better first. And I need a professional witness. I need the doctors to confirm my numbers, not hers. We need to buy time." Carol agreed. She helped me put all the evidence in a small metal lockbox. We locked it tight. The next few days were the hardest. I had to look sick while feeling better every single morning. The Clove Protocol was working miracles. My sugar was now stabilizing consistently in the low 200s. I felt a definite 25% increase in energy, and my brain was clearer. I wasn't constantly foggy anymore, but Sarah, sensing the end was near, grew impatient. "Mom, the dizziness is getting worse, isn't it?" she asked me one evening, hovering over me like a vulture. "Yes, Sarah, it is," I croaked, trying to sound frail, even though I had spent the last hour doing 5 minutes of light, stretching in my room. "I'm going to call the lawyer tomorrow. We need to finalize the house title transfer before you become unresponsive. You can sign the deed transfer and the power of attorney at the same time." My heart hammered against my ribs. She was moving fast, too fast. "And Mom," she added, giving me a sickly, sweet smile, "I've arranged for a nurse to come by on Wednesday morning to administer your morning injection. Your blood sugar is too high." The doctor agreed. An injection. She was going to kill me with a large dose of something that would look like medicine, but wasn't. Wednesday morning, 72 hours away. I had to play my strongest hand now. I stumbled dramatically in the hallway, letting out a weak cry, and collapsed back onto the floral couch. I demanded Sarah bring me my supplements, with a weak, tremulous voice. "I'm so weak, sweetie." "I think it's happening soon," I whispered, pushing away the plate of bland soup. I needed her to believe I was truly at death's door. Sarah smiled, that cold, predatory glint in her eyes returning. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything. I'm just looking out for you." While Sarah was busy texting her accomplice, maybe the person on the phone, maybe the lawyer, Carol drove me to St. Mary's Hospital, across town where Sarah never went. I paid cash. I didn't use my insurance. I asked for a full panel of blood work, including a specific toxicology screening. I told the nurse I suspected my medication was being tampered with. The nurse, a young woman named Brenda, looked at me like I was crazy, but she took the samples. I also had her run a fasting blood glucose test. "My usual reading is in the 300 range," I told her. When the results came back 20 minutes later, Brenda's jaw dropped. "Ma'am, your fasting blood glucose is 188 milligrams per deciliter. That's still type 2 diabetic, but it's nowhere near the 300s. And your toxicology screening is very low for metformin, almost non-existent. We're sending the samples to the lab for a full breakdown, but something is definitely off with your medication absorption." I simply smiled. "I know, dear. I have some very good home remedies I've been trying. I took the official hospital printout and tucked it into my new, secret logbook. This was the key. Official, undeniable proof that Sarah's logbook was a lie. That night I didn't sleep. I just watched Lily and Ethan. Their innocent faces were all the strength I needed. I had to secure their future. I called Ms. Hayes' law office downtown, pretending to be Sarah's assistant, and confirmed the Wednesday 10 a.m. appointment for the title transfer. Then I called back an hour later from a payphone at the gas station. I scheduled a separate meeting with Ms. Hayes at 9 a.m., 1 hour before Sarah was due to arrive. I told the receptionist I was Maggie Miller, the owner of the house, and I had urgent business regarding the deed transfer that could not wait. Tuesday night I practiced walking without stumbling. I ironed the gray suit I hadn't worn since Robert's funeral. I made sure my posture was straight and my hands didn't shake. Wednesday morning, the day of the confrontation, Sarah was dressed in her best professional clothes, carrying a fancy briefcase. She came to my bedside, all false sweetness. "Stay resting, Mom. The lawyer will be here soon. We need you coherent for the signature," Sarah said, giving me a quick, cold kiss on the forehead. I nodded weakly, pulling the blanket higher around my shoulders. I was a great actor now. "Yes, darling. Just a little longer," I managed to croak. Sarah left the house at 8:30 a.m. I waited 5 minutes. Then I slowly got up. I felt strong. I looked at the glass of water Sarah had left beside my bed for the morning injection. Untouched. I dressed quickly in the gray suit. I slipped the official hospital report and my secret logbook into my purse. Carol was waiting for me out back, parked out of sight, just as we planned. We drove downtown, and I went straight into Ms. Hayes' law office. The lawyer was a young, sharp woman, but her face grew pale as I laid out the evidence: the 2 logbooks, the life insurance policy, and the official hospital blood work. "Ms. Hayes," I said, my voice firm and clear, "I am here to stop this transaction and press charges for attempted murder and financial fraud. The laboratory confirmed my sugar is stabilizing at 180 milligrams per deciliter, not 320. That is a 140-point drop in 1 week, and the toxicology report shows low levels of the correct medicine and high levels of starch filler." As I finished the final sentence, placing my request for a police report on the desk, the intercom buzzed on Ms. Hayes' desk. The receptionist's voice was crisp and clear, announcing the next appointment. "Ms. Hayes, Sarah Miller is here for the 10 a.m. closing. She says her mother is in the car, too weak to come upstairs." I looked straight at Ms. Hayes, a cold wave of certainty washing over me. Sarah was about to walk into an ambush she never saw coming. "The truth will set you free," they say. But today, it was going to set me free and lock her up. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story will travel. Wednesday, exactly at 10 o'clock in the morning, Sarah Miller strode into Ms. Hayes' law office downtown, the air-conditioned waiting room smelling sharply of leather and ambition. She carried an expensive black briefcase, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, exuding the professional confidence she always wore, like armor. She expected to meet only Ms. Hayes, the title attorney, ready to finalize the deed transfer over my supposed dying body. Her polished, anticipatory smile vanished the moment she registered the scene in the conference room. Sitting comfortably across the large mahogany desk from Ms. Hayes was me, Maggie, looking sharp in the gray suit I hadn't worn since Robert's funeral. Next to me sat Carol Perkins, the stout, kind neighbor, her face set in grim determination. And next to Carol sat a man whose presence stole the color from Sarah's face. Detective Sergeant O'Connell, of the Des Moines Economic Crimes Unit. "Mom? What? What are you doing here?" Sarah stammered, her voice high and thin, her composure instantly shattering. She glanced frantically at the detective. "You were supposed to be resting in the car. You shouldn't be here. You're too weak." I had entered the office supported by Carol, moving slowly, playing the role of the frail, near-death diabetic. Now, I let the act drop. I pushed myself up from the chair and walked slowly, firmly, without the slightest tremor toward the edge of the desk. My back was straight, my eyes clear. The simple action seemed to shock Sarah more than the detective's presence. She recoiled slightly, the panic in her eyes replacing the predatory gleam of yesterday. "I decided I needed to be coherent for this signing, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, no longer a weak croak, but carrying the full weight of 30 years of running a hot cafeteria line. "More coherent than I've been in months." Detective O'Connell moved subtly, blocking the space behind Sarah. Ms. Hayes, the lawyer, opened a heavy file, her expression stern and professional. "Ms. Miller," the lawyer began, ignoring Sarah's frantic attempt to interject. "We are not here to sign the deed. We are here to discuss this." Ms. Hayes slid a thick envelope across the desk toward Sarah. It was the life insurance policy. A $450,000 policy, naming you as the sole beneficiary. Maturing in 4 weeks. This establishes clear financial motive. Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes darting between the policy and my face. "That's irrelevant. She's sick. I was just preparing the estate. Any good daughter would." I lifted my hand, stopping the detective from speaking. I preferred to deliver the blows myself. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small digital recorder Carol had helped me set up, placing it gently on the polished wood. "Oh, I know you were preparing, Sarah," I replied, my voice dangerously calm. "But you weren't preparing the estate. You were preparing my death." I pressed play. My daughter's voice, low, tight and unmistakable, filled the silent room. "It's just a matter of time now. Keep the paperwork ready for the title transfer. Soon, this house will be fully ours." The recording stopped, leaving a heavy, damning silence. Sarah shook her head violently, tears instantly pooling in her eyes. "That's out of context. You don't understand. That was about refinancing the mortgage, Mom. You know how stressed I was." I continued, ignoring her theatrical denial. I opened my second purse, pulling out the 2 spiral notebooks, hers full of lies, and mine full of truth. "Let's talk about my sickness, then," I said. "Your professional logs, Sarah, the ones you gave the doctors, showed my blood sugar was chronically high. 305, 315, 320 milligrams per deciliter, leading my doctor to believe I was spiraling toward diabetic ketoacidosis. I pushed her logbook across the desk. Then I pushed mine. This is the truth. My readings, taken with Carol's calibrated glucometer, showed a dramatic drop after I stopped taking the pills you gave me and started the Clove protocol that you insisted was useless folk medicine. I pointed to the last entry in my secret log. My reading a week ago, 230 milligrams per deciliter. My reading yesterday, taken by the hospital, 188 milligrams per deciliter. That's a drop of 140 points in a week. You were adding over 100 points to my reading every single day, just to make my case look worse. Sarah paled further, clutching the edge of the desk. Carol then slid the last piece of the puzzle forward, a sealed evidence bag containing the diluted metformin pills and the hospital lab report. "This is the key, Sarah," Carol said, her nurse's voice cutting through the tension. "Mrs. Miller's toxicology report confirms what the numbers imply. The level of metformin in her blood was near non-existent. The pills you administered were over 60% starch filler, Maggie's medicine diluted with thickening powder. You weren't managing her diabetes. You were ensuring the medicine failed, making sure she got sicker, faster, for $450,000. The weight of the evidence crushed Sarah completely. She stopped trying to deny the facts. Her face twisted into a desperate mask of fear and false pity, and she lurched forward, reaching across the table. "Mom, please, don't do this," she wailed, tears streaming down her face. "I messed up, yes, but I'm your daughter. I'm the only family you have left. Think about Lily and Ethan. You're going to put their mother in jail? You'll take their home. You're destroying your grandchildren's future just to punish me," she cried, attempting a final desperate emotional appeal. I looked straight at her, into the desperate, manipulative eyes of the woman who had shared my life and tried to steal it. My voice, when it came, was low, steady, and utterly devoid of maternal warmth. "I worked the hot line at the school cafeteria for 30 years, Sarah, sweating over trays of mac and cheese, so that you could have a life better than mine, so that you could become an educated professional who knew the difference between medicine and poison." My gaze pinned her down. "You tried to murder me with starch and fake numbers, falsifying my medical history, all for $450,000 and a little house in Des Moines." I leaned slightly closer. "You left the realm of motherhood the day you calculated my death. I did not destroy their future, Sarah. You did. And now I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure they have a future you couldn't poison." I settled back into my seat, signaling the detective. Sergeant O'Connell acted without hesitation. He stepped forward and placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Sarah Miller, you are under arrest for attempted homicide by poisoning, fraud, and falsification of medical records." Sarah let out a shriek that echoed off the mahogany walls. She resisted violently as the handcuffs clicked into place, the sound sharp and final. "You'll regret this, Mother. You won't live long enough to enjoy that money," she shrieked, her final words aimed at me, full of impotent rage, as the detective led her forcibly out of the office. Ms. Hayes immediately began the process of suspending all of Sarah's previous attempts at transferring the deed, stamping the document fraudulent and void in thick red ink. Carol squeezed my arm, relief washing over her face. I felt a tremendous weight lift from my chest, heavier than the burden of sickness ever was. The quiet justice in that room was absolute. The legal process moved quickly, driven by the clear medical and documentary evidence. Sarah Miller was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for attempted murder and medical fraud. She was immediately stripped of her pharmacy technician license and all certifications, ensuring she could never again use her knowledge to harm vulnerable people. The judge ordered her to pay a staggering $750,000 in restitution and punitive fines, a sum that utterly wiped out her limited savings and established a lien against any future assets. The $450,000 insurance payout reverted entirely to me, the policy owner, as the beneficiary had been disqualified due to felonious intent. Sarah's estranged husband, armed with the evidence of her systemic abuse and pending long-term incarceration, filed for and was immediately granted a divorce, securing full custody of Lily and Ethan and severing Sarah's last claim to family. The entire community of Des Moines, where the story was front-page news, repudiated her. Former colleagues and neighbors avoided any mention of her name. Sarah was transferred to a minimum security facility in Iowa, where she currently serves her sentence, receiving no family visits, completely isolated by her own actions. 2 years later, at 71, I wake up before the sun every single day. I walk 3 miles through the neighborhood park, often accompanied by Carol. I lost 30 pounds, and the last remnants of the dry cough vanished entirely within 3 months of my confrontation with Sarah. My physical recovery has been profound. My blood sugar, which Sarah logged as high as 320, now consistently stabilizes between 115 and 125 milligrams per deciliter. I no longer need the heavy doses of metformin or glyburide, managing my condition entirely through diet and the Clove Protocol. My vitality, previously a mere 25%, is now near 100%. I used the insurance money, combined with the substantial legal settlement from Sarah, to establish the Magnolia Trust, an educational advocacy group focused on senior self-defense against medical and financial fraud. The organization, co-founded with Carol Perkins, now my closest confidant and technical advisor, operates out of the very house Sarah coveted. We host weekly workshops. I teach hundreds of seniors the power of simple natural intervention, emphasizing that knowledge and self-monitoring are the ultimate weapons. I proudly share the Clove Protocol, soaking 2 whole cloves in 8 ounces of water overnight, drinking the infusion in the morning, and showing them how those simple cloves can safely lower blood sugar by 25 milligrams per deciliter daily. We've distributed hundreds of our own logbooks, encouraging every senior to log their real numbers and question their medication. We've helped over 450 families identify and escape situations of medical neglect similar to mine. I was granted permanent legal guardianship of Lily, who is now 12, and Ethan, who is 10. They are safe, thriving in the home where they belong, filling the silence with noise and laughter. My maternal grief over Sarah has faded, replaced by the profound satisfaction of protecting the next generation. Sometimes, in the early morning, I stand in the kitchen, preparing my clove water for the day. I look at the small old house, which is no longer a cage, but a fortress of peace and healing. I think of the weak, terrified woman I was 2 years ago, collapsing onto the floral couch, convinced my body had betrayed me. Today I know the truth. My body never betrayed me. It was sending me warnings all along. The sickness was not physical. It was the betrayal of my daughter. She wanted me to die weak, sickly, and eventually dead for $450,000. But the moment I chose to fight back, fueled by 2 simple cloves and the righteous anger of a mother, I became stronger than she could ever afford to buy. She tried to bury the evidence, but all she did was bury her own future. Now, I stir the spiced water, the scent of the cloves warm and earthly in the cool morning air. I take a deep breath. My body is healthy, my mind is clear, and my grandchildren are safe. I sip the life-giving liquid, savoring the peaceful silence. The revenge is complete. The victory is quiet, and entirely my own. The daughter I loved traded my life for a house and a paltry sum of money. The woman who stood up to her gained perfect health, custody of her grandchildren, and a purpose that saved hundreds of lives. The truest form of victory, I realized, is the one achieved quietly, steadily. Through the simple, life-saving knowledge that you no longer need their medicine to live. And if you stayed with me until the end, leave a comment letting me know what you thought of the story and what kinds of stories you'd like to read more of. Thank you so much for being here. See you in the next emotional story.